What makes a good hero? Well, you have to have courage, empathy, perseverance, and confidence. But you also need a great villain. And the Toy Story movies certainly have their share. So in this video, I'm going to share the 7 best villains ever in the Toy Story movies. But before I do, feel free to subscribe to the Tech Talk Toys YouTube channel, where each week I'll be adding new content on lots of different topics, including Toy Story. Okay, so let's get started. At number 7, I'm ranking Zurg. I know it sounds a little bit weird. Zurg is physically bigger than the other toys, looks very imposing, and appears to have a dangerous weapon. So he should be the greatest villain, but he's not. Now, the beginning of Toy Story 2 was a great start for Zurg. He looked super powerful in the opening scene, pursued Buzz like the Terminator, and even gained the upper hand in their showdown. But moments later, his entire character becomes a joke, thanks to the whole I Am Your Father Star Wars parody. Then, in Toy Story 3, he's portrayed as a preschool toy. If anything, his portrayal in Buzz Lightyear of Star Command is better, but in the movies, he's mostly comedy. A far cry from the evil Emperor who burned Buzz into a crisp in the video game. At number 6, I'm going with Gabby Gabby from Toy Story 4. For most of the movie, she was the main villain, but at the end you realize she was just a lonely toy who wanted the same type of love that Woody had with Andy. Of course, she had her moments, like kidnapping Forky in an attempt to manipulate Woody into giving her his voice box, which actually works. But after Harmony's rejection, she has audiences feeling sorry for her and cheering when she finally finds her kid. So while the potential for a great villain was there, her character just wasn't evil enough. At number 5, I'm going with the secondary villain from Toy Story 4, that being the Benson dolls. While these dummies simply followed orders for Gabby Gabby, they were her muscle and were more scary and dangerous than she ever was. The scene where they try to rip out Woody's voice box is terrifying for children, and probably some adults. Just about everyone who watches Toy Story 4 remembers these creepy dummies, and yes, like Gabby Gabby, by the end of the film I guess they have joined the side of the protagonists, but these guys still give people the creeps. At number 4, we have Big Al McWhiggin. Although he never directly interacts with any of the characters in the films, Big Al is a fantastic villain. He's not overly aggressive or physically imposing, but he does have his share of not-so-great characteristics like being impatient and rude. But his downfall is definitely greed. He is perhaps the most selfish villain in these movies. Think about how he steals Woody from a yard sale after Andy's mother clearly states that he was a family toy that was mistakenly there. And how he hoards just about every piece of Woody merchandise in his apartment, attempting to squeeze every cent out of Japanese collector Mr. Konishi. I know many of the animators in Toy Story 4 were big toy collectors themselves, so I'm pretty sure that Al was based on the type of obsessive collector who only cares about the value of items and overlooks the fact that these toys, or collectibles, were made for children to play with. It's interesting because by the end of the film, a downtrodden Al kind of acknowledges his mistakes with regret. But while he's not really intimidating or scary, Al's intense greed makes him a very good villain. At number 3, we have Sid Phillips. I remember children literally being scared of Sid when watching Toy Story in 1995, so much that they'd cover their eyes whenever he was on screen. Of all the villains, he is probably the most menacing and physically terrifying. Then why isn't he ranked higher? Well, my thinking is, while he did horrible things to toys, he never really knew that they were real, and when he did know they were alive, he completely freaked out. A lot of us know someone like a Sid, a kid that's a little hyperactive, mean to his siblings, and maybe rough on their toys, but I'm not sure that makes them a bad person. In fact, the character of Sid was based on a former Pixar animator who, like Sid, disassembled toys and made his own creation. So while Sid was a great villain in Toy Story, he's far from the best. At number 2, we have Pete the Prospector. Stinky Pete has all the makings for an excellent villain. Instead of possessing extraordinary physical prowess, Pete's superpowers are his intelligence, cunning, and his ability to manipulate the rest of the Roundup gang. And like any delusional movie heel, he honestly believes that what he's doing is right and that he's better than everyone else. What separates Pete from the rest of the Toy Story villains is that he's just plain mean and doesn't care about anyone but himself. If you're on his side, he's the well-spoken, fun, jovial prospector. But if you're not, he'll try anything to con you into believing what he thinks is right, often resorting to drastic measures. In a world where the main purpose of a toy is to be played with, Pete just doesn't care about a relationship with a kid like Andy. He's lived in his box the entire life, and everything he stands for is in complete contrast from the speech Buzz gives that eventually convinces Woody to leave the Roundup gang. It's a shame that he was only in Toy Story 2 because I would love to find out what happens to Pete. But even though he's one of my favorite villains, he's not number one. So who is? And number one, we have Lotso Huggin' Bear. Maybe I'm a bit biased because Toy Story 3 is my favorite movie of the series, but I just love Lotso. He has an unbelievable backstory which gives his character so much depth. On the outside, you see this lovable, pink, Care Bear-looking plush who speaks in an old-time southern drawl and seems to be the best guy at Sunnyside. But on the inside, Lotso allows the intense pain and anger from being replaced to fuel his selfish, conniving, and power-hungry personality. Everything that Lotso does is calculated and purposeful. He's able to size up others upon first meeting and immediately plays the long game in his mind. Initially, he acts kind and friendly, like the greatest guy in the world, but at the same time, he's orchestrating a plan which preys on people's insecurities, putting them in terrible situations. He wants to control everything. If you dare cross Lotso, he has the power and the muscle to make you pay the price. And just like any oppressive leader, Lotso rules by fear, and it seemingly allowed him to build an empire in Sunnyside Daycare. The thing that I love about Lotso as a villain is that he was once a kind and loyal toy, just like the rest of the characters in Toy Story. And after learning his backstory, towards the end of the film, you think he's going to come to his senses and realize that him being left behind was simply an accident. You think he's going to change his mindset, but that never happens. The best example is during the famous incinerator scene. While the rest of the toys are making an escape, Woody sees Lotso trapped and calling for help. We all know that time is of the essence, so that Woody and Buzz should just ignore him. But instead, they try to do the right thing and save Lotso. I mean, look at his face. This was the moment where I thought, okay, here's where Lotso redeems himself and becomes a hero. But nope, after Woody and Buzz both risk their lives to save him, Lotso reveals that these expressions were all an act. He saves himself but leaves the rest of the toys to fall toward the incinerator, and the way he does it is just brilliant in a devious way. He goes so far to feign concerned facial expressions only to deliver one last sarcastic remark punctuated with that little salute gesture. Amazing. Now, just like Pete, we don't quite know what happened to Lotso, but within the universe it's possible he's still alive and maybe living not too far from Bonnie. And I know this probably won't happen, especially considering his amazing voice actor Ned Beatty recently passed away, but how cool would it be if Lotso somehow made his return in a sequel or a special with vengeance on his mind? I know, it's not gonna happen, but a fan can dream, right? Either way, for my money, Lotso Huggin' Bear is the greatest villain of the Toy Story films. So how did I do? Is there anyone I forgot? Go ahead and rank the villains for yourself in the comments section below.